back to another episode, a double episode of VCTV here on Partner Monday. We are super excited to have you back with us as we are going from the farm, as we just talked about in our last episode, as we were talking about the future of food and marketplaces, to the stars. And yes, that is right. This is the exciting episode we've been covering a little bit more frequently here on VCTV because there is so much happening in this space as we look towards the stars and beyond. We are talking about space and deep technologies. We are looking at everything that is encompassing in space, not just getting to space, but well beyond that. What happens and what are the technologies, products, and services needed to live, thrive, work, mine, everything in space? How do we get there? What do we do once we get there, and where do we go beyond that? These are things that are actual realities. This is not future tech that we're looking at in the next 40, 50 years. This is stuff that's happening now, things you need to know as entrepreneurs and investors to start preparing for this exciting industry that's exploding everywhere and is starting to thrive at all different levels. And from a deep technology standpoint, we're going to be talking about AI. We're going to be talking about machine learning. We're going to be talking about blockchain and everything in between, because all of these technologies, as we've talked about in the past, play a role in space, both figuratively and literally as well. So get ready, strap in. We're getting ready for liftoff here in just a few minutes. But before we do, a big thank you to you, our audience, for tuning in. If you like what you've heard today or will be hearing, make sure you click subscribe and give us a thumbs up. If you would like to be on a show like today as an investor, reach out. We'd love to have you on to share your thoughts and insights of what's happening in a technology, region, or industry that you're an expert in. Entrepreneurs, this is no show just for investors, pardon me. This is also an opportunity for you. There is a virtual stage sitting right in front of me where you can get on and actually get the chance to pitch each and every one of us as investors and to our live audience. Reach out. We'd love to find the right opportunity for you and investor set as well. And a big shout out to Elena and to the entire LA Token team for making VCTV possible every single day on your screen, your device, anywhere in the world. With that being said, I'm Kyle Ellicott, your host. Let's dive in to talking about space, deep technologies as we look to the stars and well beyond. And I want to welcome each of our guests, and they're joining us from around the world, in some cases outer space, as Ifran is floating above Earth over there. But nonetheless, they've joined us as experts in their field to talk about these areas. And so for the next little bit, we're going to dive in. All right. With that being said, Julian, welcome to the show. First time with Elena and I. If you can, a short introduction, a little background on yourself.
Thank you, Kyle. My name is Julian Tex. I'm an aerospace engineer. Started working at Airbus and actually ended up working 12 years in investment banking in Switzerland and France. After that, joined Airbus Ventures in California for several years, investing their corporate venture fund before I came back to Europe, and now working for Upfront Ventures, which is a generalist fund based out of Los Angeles, hence my background.
Awesome. Wonderful. Great to have you. Very familiar with Upfront and what they've been able to do, not just for the greater investment ecosystem, but also in Los Angeles. And I'm excited to have you here to share more about that. Ifran, welcome back to the show. I know it's probably hard to hear me, and this might be a little delayed with you being up in orbit and everything, but we are so honored that you would take the time. But all jokes aside, a little intro, a little background for those who may not know you.
Thank you, Kyle. FYI, the communication from Earth to space have drastically improved, so I could hear you loud and clear. And of course, that industry is becoming more and more prospective. That being said, my name is Irfan. I represent my own firm, which is Irfan Holdings. But separately, in this case, today I'll be talking about another of my sister entity, which is Space Fund, which is an early stage fund investing in space companies globally. Thanks for having me, and I'm excited to be in this panel.
Awesome. We had one of your partners on in a recent episode, Megan, who is also phenomenal in this space and has a great background as well. And by the way, audience, I apologize in advance. I am full of puns today, so please, just laugh along with them. Nonetheless, Gary Fowler, welcome back. the grand master of artificial intelligence from not just the ground, but to the stars and well beyond. A little introduction, a little background on yourself.
You're such a punny guy. Anyhow, my name's great to be here, Kyle. So my name's Gary Fowler, and I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've done 15 companies, started the first accelerator in Russia, #1 private corporate accelerator. I also today have GSD Venture Studios, which is a venture studios that curates incredible AI companies across multiple vertical markets to be able to help them grow and go global. So I'm into AI. I love AI. Eva.ai, which is my last AI company, is moving into unicorn status today. We started about 4.5 years ago. Click Software is a company I was original management team of, was sold to Salesforce for $1.35 billion, and just love this stuff. So thanks for allowing me to be on your show. Great to see the new guests, and talk to you soon.
Thank you for joining. We do appreciate it here. Cynthia, welcome to the show as well. First time guest with Elena and I. It's a pleasure. A little intro, a little background.
Sure, thanks. And I'm also very happy to be here. I'm based right now at Lake Winnipesaukee in New Hampshire, normally based in Boston. I was part of the original team that helped stand up the International Space Station National Lab in 2011. So I don't come at it from an investor side. I come at it more from the commercialization of low Earth orbit. In 2018, I started my own company, Space Commerce Matters, and over the past couple of years have been working across the globe with organizations, startups, entrepreneurs, as well as large aerospace and space agencies on the commercialization of space. And I would just add that when I started with the International Space Station National Lab in 2011, you could not beg, borrow, or steal a commercial company to do anything in low Earth orbit because they didn't think it was in their lane. And when I left in 2018, over 55% of the users of the International Space Station were commercial companies. We had generated more than $160 million of them actually paying for space services for their terrestrial business. And these are across organizations like every major pharmaceutical company, consumer product companies, industrial companies, those companies that did not think space was their business and ended up having a significant amount of activity there. So anxious to talk with all of my fellow panelists about these types of things and see what the trajectory looks like as we move forward.
Wow, that's exciting. That is very exciting. We're definitely diving into that. Julian's got a smirk on his face. He's ready to talk about it too. This is great. All right, Chris, last but not least, a little introduction and a little background on yourself.
Oh yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yep, a little staticky. You might be hanging out with Ifren all the way up, maybe a little bit further, closer to Mars, but nonetheless.
A little bit further out. Yeah, I started my career at a multidisciplinary deep future research institute called Starlab in Brussels. And I was working on an AI project there that was in the Guinness Book of World Records. We also had a time travel division that was funded by NASA and the US Air Force. I was working with those guys. Then I moved to Kavli Institute of Nanoscience in Delft, where I was working on quantum technology, quantum computing. And in 2009, I went to NASA Ames. I did commercial astronaut training with NASA and now with the Association of Spaceflight Professionals. I started SolarCoin, which is a renewable energy blockchain technology company. Co-founder and chief scientist. And most recently, I'm part of the civilian equivalent of the Pentagon UAP task force.
Wow. Okay, wow. All right. Well, welcome to the show. This is a panel, ladies and gentlemen. I promise you some fun. This is going to be amazing. This is going to be a ton of fun. Guys, let's start with the very first question because I think you're all ready for it at this point, eager to jump in, and that's the current state of these industries. So talking about space tech and a little bit of deep technology, and really let's start with space. What is the current state of space and space technology in the industry as a whole, as we've seen so much and talked so much about this here on VCTV and many different angles, but really from each of your viewpoints, what are you seeing as kind of the current state of the industry around space tech. Julian, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, space tech and deep tech is obviously more exciting, I think, than a number of other industrial fields. Why? Because you look up in the stars, you see that there is a world out there you'd like to, and you'd like to do something about it. You'd like to explore its resources, you'd like to see more, you'd like to do more, you'd like humankind to be elsewhere than on the planet Earth sometime, especially when you watch the news. Now, when it comes to investments, it's not easy, right? Because it's extremely CapEx intensive. It's extremely long-term. And sometimes it's incompatible with the financing terms that venture capital funds or private equity funds can deliver for a startup versus what they have to deliver for their own investors. So how do you reconcile both parts of the puzzle? Again, I don't have all the answers, but that would be my introduction.
Also, anything further in terms of what do you see as the current state? I mean, is anything happening, thriving, not thriving? Are we seeing this kind of push a little further in terms of yeah? I mean, go deep on this.
I mean, commercial aviation is obviously not going great. You know, a number of airlines are reporting that the business trips have obviously not resumed in Europe as they would have hoped, despite being less confined. Obviously, in the US, it's also not the case. And so everything which is around commercial aviation, travel, tourism, customer experience, all of this is pretty much on standstill, right? And so it's pretty tough for startup to raise a single dollar unless they're cross-vertical, cross-mobility aspects. Now, the space sector actually is thriving. And every time you have more news on SpaceX, a fundraising that pushes its valuation higher, and even also great news from Europe with Ariane #6 and a number of successful launches, it gives more optimism and enthusiasm around the space. So the space sector has been thriving currently versus to the aero part of the equation, if I can be, that's how I would phrase it today.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Efron, to you, what do you see as the current state of space tech and the space industry as a whole right now?
Thank you, Kyle. And I agree with what Julian just said, specifically from an investor's point of view. Of course, space deep tech is a very exciting and very it's like the highest most spectrum field that one could get involved in. However, investment traditional systems are very different, and in terms of looking at benchmarks to look into this industry will be very different, and it's challenging at times. However, there is opportunity, and this is why I'm here also. According to Morgan Stanley, this industry is going to be about a $1.1 trillion industry by 2040. And that being said, there has been advancement that's been happening. So there are two sectors that I'm gonna, discuss in today's session. One is the manufacturing and the pushing the frontiers of technology and how space has an impact to the global economy. And separately, and I think Julian touched a little bit on that, is on space tourism, which is an interesting field that's growing, and we can see that is going to be a reality very soon. And I'm sure some of you have heard, Virgin Galactic also very recently made an announcement in terms of taking passengers to the borderlines of the Earth orbit. And then there's several other companies like Blue Origin is also exploring that. So we can talk about that a little bit more during the conversation. But it is a great industry to be in, and the industry is prospective, as well as it's filled with entrepreneurs and ideas, and and it has implication in the overall industry. So that's a little bit from me. Thank you.
Yeah, and it finally feels like the right time. I mean, this industry has been talked about for so many years, and there's been little blips here and there over the past decade, I would say, and I see Cynthia shaking her head as well. Little blips over the past decade of where you could get in either to build or to invest. And finally, I think we're coming to a point where, nothing's off the table, right? There's the Space Fund and many others that you can join. There's investors like Upfront and others that are making investments throughout this space. And then entrepreneurial wise, there's just a ton of opportunity. And Cynthia, to you, I mean, what are you seeing as the current state around the space industry as we come full circle from your work in 2011 to here now in 2020?
Yeah. And I think I see it maybe on the sort of reciprocal side, for lack of a better word, than what we've heard so far. To me, space has always been supply side oriented, engineering, rockets, thrusters, propulsion, all of the supply side activity. And the work that we've seen over the last 8-9 years is really looking more at the demand side, looking at what are these non-traditional companies, these non-traditional propositions that low Earth orbit can accommodate. And when I talk about space, I'm primarily talking about low Earth orbit. What I've seen happen really with NASA and with every other space agency across the planet is as they try to move more into the moon, Mars, and beyond and put resources and funding behind that, they're looking for the commercial sector to fill in and to come into low Earth orbit. So as NASA says, I want to be one of many customers. I don't want to be the only customer in low Earth orbit. So that is actually providing lots of opportunity to move that proposition, that activity, from sort of traditional R&D, which doesn't necessarily have a robust marketplace, to what we're now seeing are areas of small scale manufacturing that could lead to scale up manufacturing in areas around depositioning, manufacturing for inorganic materials like semiconductors or fiber optics, which literally have huge total addressable markets. So what I'm seeing is low Earth orbit becoming just another marketplace where there's opportunity for these demand side applications. And you're seeing maybe not venture money coming into that, but you're seeing corporate investment. You're seeing customer funding supporting that type of activity.
Which we also have seen in the past can actually drive these types of things and bring the investment capital with them, bring more entrepreneur opportunities as well. So I think you're calling it out right. Gary, to you, same thing around space and just broader deep tech with your background in AI. What are you seeing as the kind of the current state as these intersect as well?
Yeah, I mean, the situation is, as we've talked about numerous times, Kyle, it's, keep it simple, stupid, right? We talked about, we've got challenges with the environment on the planet Earth. We've got 4x the population in the last 100 years. We've got 6 billion, and this is based on the Kepler project, up to 6 billion planets like Earth in the Milky Way galaxy, estimated to be about 100 billion galaxies out there, 100 million. So if we look at it, I mean, there's an incredible opportunity. Then at the same time, you've got Blue Origin, you've got our friend Elon Musk, and you've got Virgin Galactic. So now you've got commercial endeavors, a little bit different than the primary governmental endeavors that we had, 40 years ago. So it's changed. And I think that the technology has really started to pace forward enough, and especially in the areas of artificial intelligence and assistance with space, being able to look at things like space debris. I mean, think about the enormous amount of calculations you're going to have in order to get to a planet like Mars. It's incredible. And there can't be any mistakes, because the mistakes can have a bad impact on the mission. So we've got the intersection of technology, the intersection of artificial intelligence, and the commercial opportunity. As Cynthia said, this is a great time because it's really pushing things forward. Look at Elon Musk done in since 2002, 2003. It's incredible. So, I mean, we're on the verge of a new frontier.
Absolutely. Good transition to Chris. Chris, what are you seeing as the current state of the industry around space and deep technology based on your background as well?
Well, on May 28, we had Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley return in the first SpaceX Dragon Endeavour spacecraft. It's the first manned expedition using commercial providers. And so we've got SpaceX ramping up now. They've got 2 came back from the ISS last month, and they're sending 4 more up in the next 2 or 3 months. And of course, over the next couple of years, things are going to explode because we've got SpaceX is going to be ramping up their applications. They've also got this Starship that they're planning to send to Mars, and they want to be on Mars actually by 2024, which is the same time span that NASA expects to be on the moon. We're going to have several commercial space stations. We've got the Axiom space station. We've got Orion Span using veterans from the ISS management team. And of course, the ISS itself is going to be taken over by commercial interests. And so you're going to see a lot more commercial astronauts going up, which is a personal interest of mine, being that I'm trained as a commercial astronaut. We actually have submitted several research proposals to NASA for suborbital spaceflight, manned suborbital spaceflight tests, and they've approved several of them. And as soon as the vehicles are ready, we'll be going up on Virgin Galactic.
Wow, that's exciting. So with everyone here, I think the common theme is around corporates, and corporations are getting involved at a much deeper level, and whether that's good or bad. And so the next question for each of you is commercialization of space, right? Corporates getting involved. Is this for the good, or is this actually going to be for the bad? And I think there's views on both sides. So Julian, let's start with you. I mean, commercialization of space, is this a good thing with corporates getting involved now more than ever?
I think so. I mean, at a personal level, it's almost a philosophical question. Should the state lead innovation? In some countries, in some cultures, some people believe so, and I would respect that highly. Typically, states have an investment horizon that is in centuries and not just a decade, like most venture capital funds. And so this is the most appropriate funding source for a space project that sometimes takes 15, 20, 25 years to blossom. I don't think we would have been able to go on the moon in the 60s if a corporation decided to fund it in the early 60s, right? Now we're in 2020, and capitalism has moved in a very different direction than what most people expected just 50 years ago. Wealth has been accumulated at a personal level, has been accumulated in corporations, for better or for worse, and I'm not trying to do a moral judgment here, but for better or worse, there is so much more money, means, and ability to embrace long-term risk in the hands of personal individuals as well as corporation as there was before. And so I think it's a natural transition from a funding source standpoint to move from states to corporations and individual money, because at the end of the day, Elon Musk and a number of other billionaires are in fact the ones funding most of these ambitions. And so I think that's the only way forward. It's not like we have a choice today.
So you're with Upfront, and you guys have made some investments in the space. I mean, are you looking at any investments that can help on the commercial side, the commercialization side, or what are you seeing from the venture aspect that's getting you excited on the commercialization of space?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a number of fields which are interesting for me. Some of them have a risk budget that is higher than even what Upfront sometimes can do when it comes to deep tech. And so sometimes there is an overlap, and so when it comes to the commercial part of the aerospace equation, I think there will be a change of fueling systems for the future of aerospace. Will it be hydrogen? Will it be electricity? Will it be other systems? I don't know. But the way the airspace is managed will change. The way the fueling systems will change. There is a number of evolution in this field that are making me excited. On the space side, I think it's never been easier to order a small CubeSat to be custom to your needs with a proper propulsion, a launch vehicle that is actually pretty cheap, etc. And so this is getting exciting, I think, for a number of companies to generate their own data, generate their own telecommunication links at a very cheap price. So not everybody realized that, actually, that there is so much that you can do today at a click of a button, almost, with a number of startups. But the number of corporations are getting more and more aware, and this is unlocking some interesting opportunities.
Cynthia, I see you're shaking your head. This is what you've been focused on for the past couple of years. Is this good, bad? What does this mean as we start to commercialize space?
To me, it's necessary, and that's when we talk about the need to commercialize low Earth orbit so that governments can focus resources on greater exploration agendas. By definition, it has to be, the private sector or corporations that are doing this. And the things, and Gary hit on this one during his one of his remarks, in terms of the activity that's happening in low Earth orbit literally is helping to save our planet. And we're looking at lots of things around life science and sustainability and crop production and more efficient ways of doing things with less power or less, resources from an energy standpoint here on Earth. And just one example, we worked with Target Corporation, and they were looking at doing research on bathing suits, on chlorine on bathing suits. And during one of those conversations, they mentioned that it takes 700 gallons of water to produce one cotton t-shirt. And from there, we ended up working with their corporate social responsibility team. They put $1 million into a cotton sustainability challenge where we were using space-based phenomena, microgravity, the extreme conditions, and the vantage point to solve more sustainable cotton production here on Earth. So I think looking at low Earth orbit as a marketplace where commercial players are coming in and benefiting their own operations here on the ground is one way to look at it. But these corporations are also doing good things for our planet, as are other, research foundations and others that are, again, looking at, a lot of the astronauts that I've worked with over the years have said, you kind of have to go off the planet to save our planet. And I think there is a lot of that in the activity that's taking place in low Earth orbit. So it's not just, corporate greed, it's creation of new marketplace, and it's really doing things that are saving our planet.
Absolutely. And Ifran, same to you, the commercialization space. I mean, what does this mean, furthering Cynthia and Julian's point?
Right. Thanks, Kyle. And thank you, Cynthia, for pointing those things out. And Julian, I'm going to take a different angle to it. And in this case, it's relevant as to some of the work that I'm doing in this space. So one that includes that it's important also to remember the space is big. The industry is big enough to accommodate not only corporate and billionaires. One of the tagline, that went with this industry, that this is a big boys, playing field, kind of like, it's a hobby field, and that's something that I am working day and night to demystify. And because of my background, coming from more traditional numbers based industry, I had to get into this space to understand that how effectively this industry would be making sense in terms of numbers and participation, where we can see commercial improvement. So that being said, as Cynthia pointed out, number one, of course, it is not only corporate social responsibility, but it's also advancement of science. If you look at it, I mean, till today, a lot of the technologies that we are using in the traditional industries and the markets has been earlier developed in the space industry. So ultimately, there are intersection points where it can be used. So as you know, that I'm also involved in the blockchain space. So there is a company that we have been looking at. It's called Ibiza Network. So they use geospatial data along with blockchain to do agro information and providing a company to basically monitor crop cultivation across the developing countries, which has been a challenge when it comes to deploying capital to financing agro farming in developing countries, as data are not always present. And I believe Chris also mentioned earlier one of the portfolios that we have also participated in is Axiom Space, which is also trying to create the commercial space station. And then there's several other companies, as Cynthia mentioned, in low Earth orbit, companies like Orbit Fab. So this is like a space gas station. And then Made in Space, which is also a company that we have participated in, which is focusing on the manufacturing capabilities within space, utilizing some of the concepts such as zero gravity, etc. So that said, it's interesting just to think about what this industry has to offer. And it's not only space, but some of the logistics that could go in. So think about energy, and something that I've discussed even earlier also, that it's a phenomenon that we need to be looking at. The thing is, as Julian mentioned, is that it's not the risk appetite that we are talking about. It's just, it requires investors to have a different kind of bill. is the same way, investors who are participating in hardware production is going to be very different than investors who are participating in software production. And so the results are very immediate, whereas in this case the results are long term. I cannot say that, in a lot of cases, the risk of a hardware-based or a space-based project could be much lower compared to even a software, but the size and the time, sometimes, puts like a shadow into what can be achieved. So, but the bottom line is that we know that as a world, we are moving, towards, a lot of challenges. And one of them is energy challenge. Over the coming years, we're going to come across that. So without, exploration in terms of how we can create efficient combustion, how we can create, better energy resources, we're going to come and encounter a problem. So ultimately, this is just a different set of portfolios when it comes for investors as to how to look at it. Not in terms of that this is a high risk area. I would say high risk areas would be in hedge fund, but this is more like it requires you to have a more detailed understanding where you're getting involved into. But I would say that it is relevant.
Yeah, it's a deeper mindset and a longer term investment, right? The risk is just a typical risk profile, depending on the type of company, but it's just long term, right? It requires a different mindset, as everyone's mentioning. And Chris, to you, I mean, in terms of the commercialization of space, it sounds like this is a positive for you, but also just in general, what are your thoughts around this, and where can it really go?
Well, expanding outwards to space is by definition going to grant us newfound technologies for sustainable communities that will in turn help sustainable development on Earth. Advanced composites, biotechnology, nanotechnology, more affordable reusable rockets, and in particular in situ resource utilization, where we are going to be recycling and using 100% of our resources at the same time. And I'm also part of the advisory board for the Overview Institute of Australia. And you'll note that a lot of the astronauts, when they go to space, they bring back a spiritual experience or a personal interpretation of a changed vision, where they have what's called the overview effect. It's a spiritual transformation that all astronauts bring back to Earth. It's a sort of transcendent sense of wonder and enlightenment and shared unity on seeing our planet from space. Because when you're up there, there's no borders or boundaries. There's no divisions to keep us apart. And we're all, in a sense, one race sharing one small home. And they can see the delicate, thin blue ribbon of Earth's atmosphere and see how fragile it is and how pollution is such a great problem for us, how precarious our position is here, and how we all share a profound responsibility to cherish life itself and each other, and to steward and protect all the other species on our planet, because we're the only ones that can. Now, as far as the downside goes, I'm most worried about a Kessler syndrome. That is the scenario where there's a potential war in space or a potential aggression from an adversary. You can see China has been developing an aggressive stance, their satellite technologies. And if you have what's called the Kessler effect, it's a collisional cascade between satellites, where it's kind of an exponential ramp up in which collisions between objects create a cascade, where each collision creates space debris that causes further collisions. And if that occurred, it would close off low Earth orbit to everyone for the near future, like hundreds of years from now.
Wow. That's definitely something to be mindful of as more investment is made in this space, whether it's opportunity or actual capital. And so I want to come around to everybody with a few just quick questions. Cynthia, I want to come back to you around opportunity. So Julian mentioned a few around fueling stations and also CubeSats. Are you seeing any other opportunities that people should be paying attention to now if they're looking to start building or investing in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I think it's really on that low Earth orbit as a new marketplace demand side. And I have seen the move from the R&D only activity to those areas that have the potential for manufacturing. And where we see those areas not just be small scale manufacturing, but like a real scale up manufacturing in, organic depositioning materials. And I know, I think it was Mohammed that mentioned made in space. 3D printing is one type of manufacturing, but you've got depositioning manufacturing, you have furnace crystallization, you have all of these things that microgravity enable and make the end results, the product, such a superior quality that that's where I'm really looking at, is where are those opportunities for small scale and scale up manufacturing in many of the materials, the fiber optics, as well as on the life science side, organ production. And you've got a company called TechShot that's working on a 3D bioprinter. There's definitely a lot of challenges with that type of printing organs in space and then bringing them back down. But when we are able to effectively do that, and it's really going to be the transportation vehicles, the G-force on landing, that's going to enable us to be able to bring down these very sensitive structures. We're going to break open, very, very big markets that are going to have a big impact here. So again, I'm looking at it from what are those areas that have that trajectory from R&D to manufacturing.
And thank you, Cynthia. Julian, you had a point as well you wanted to add on to. Julian, you're on mute.
I'm sorry, Cynthia, to have cut you at the beginning of your speech. I thought it was my turn. Apologies for that. Now, I was going to mention software-defined radio. Software-defined radio, in my opinion, is a very investable niche or very investable area of the aerospace sector. Again, software-defined radios are working not only for satellites, they're working on planes, they're working on the ground, and they're really the next frontier when it comes to telecommunication bandwidth from a low Earth orbit standpoint for military applications, for commercial applications in orbit, in space, and on the ground. And so because it is with such a wide aperture in terms of usages, the technology has, I think, a lot of room to scale and thrive in the coming few years.
And real quick, just for the audience, what are software differential radios for those who may not know?
Yeah, software-defined radios, if you want. I think, look at a toast, the typical toast that you would use for a breakfast. That is an antenna that looks like it, right? So it has a very different shape than a traditional antenna, and it's able to direct radio beams pretty much where it wants, okay? So thanks to that, you can send very powerful radio beams to very precise areas. You can extract huge bandwidth from that. And because of the toast-like form factor of the antenna, you can slap it on the fuselage of an aircraft, or you can put it on a CubeSat in a very compact format. It's also very energy efficient. And so that's kind of the next frontier for antennas management and bandwidth management.
I love it. It's something we've seen in a different form around IoT and sensors, so the Internet of Things and small scale sensors. So this is just a huge leap forward from some of those things we've seen in other industries. So great mention, Julian. And guys, we are at the lightning round, so I want to be cautious as we are coming to the top of the hour on Partner Monday here. So I want to come around to get everyone's closing thoughts, and then where everyone can find you online to continue the conversation. And then I'll have one fun, super quick question for everybody. Ifrin, let's start with you. Closing thoughts, on the industry and where things are going from here, and then where can everyone find you online?
Great. Thanks, Kyle. And thank you for a great panel. And I think, so as I said, I think that this industry is going to open up in multiple fields. So one is obviously in the advancement of science field. The second one is in the commercial field when it comes to commercialization within the LEO. And then separately also developments such as what Julian just mentioned, which is more on the logistics sides of the industry. And so I see this industry, is going to be growing more with greater visibility and understanding. And for anyone to reach out to me, they can reach out to me over LinkedIn. I'm bullish about this industry, and I would like to be. And I hope that my contribution would be heavily focused in the energy side over the next few years. So
and definitely, if you haven't already, check out on VCTV. We did a great keynote with Ifrin around the future of energy and where things are going, both here on the ground and into the stars as well. So Gary, to you, quick closing thoughts, and where can everyone find you?
Yeah. So no, I think this is I'm really happy that we're back on track with space and that it is commercialized. You look at things like dust busters and freeze-dried food and LASIK eye surgery, shocks for buildings, so many technologies, including Velcro, right, from the Russians. I mean, there's incredible technologies that come out of this, and I'm really excited about that. I'm really excited about the time for artificial intelligence because of massive amounts of data that needs to be analyzed to help astronauts and cosmonauts go to space. So I think it's a great opportunity. Anyhow, you can reach me, Gary Fowler, at LinkedIn, or Gary@gsdvs.com. I love to hear from you. We work with growth stage companies. We also are building a $100 million fund, and we'd love to talk to you. Thanks, Kyle.
Wonderful. Thank you. Julian, quick closing thoughts, and where can everyone find you online?
Sure. I'm with Upfront Ventures, so just type upfront.com and you'll see me part of the team. You can reach out to me and discuss about space. If you're an entrepreneur, if you're an investor, if you're an institution, I'd be happy to talk to you about space and what you can do from a capital standpoint with it.
Awesome. Chris, to you, any closing thoughts about the future of the industry, and then also where can everyone find you online?
Yes, I'm on Twitter as Coherence. I'm on LinkedIn as Altman, Altman. And I've got a blog, it's superconducting.blogspot.com. Now, as far as for the long-term future of space goes, you've got to look back to the 2004 USS Nimitz incident. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but it was an encounter between some Navy fighter pilots and a UFO, essentially. They call it a UAP. And they filmed it and released this in December of 2017, along with a few other films. And the Pentagon has since acknowledged that this is not anything in our inventory that's available to us, and that it's truly an unknown. Now, it remains to be seen whether or not this is a Russian or a Chinese test drone or something like that, or some sort of drone that's being developed by someone like Elon Musk that's been yet to be released. But if it actually does turn out to be what everyone suspects, going back to the history of UFOs, and we actually do communicate with some sort of UAP going forward, we would have the equivalent of hundreds of thousands to millions of years of technological development overnight. So this is in fact a big thing. The Pentagon has acknowledged that they've been investigating this classified for some time, and they've actually now have a congressionally mandated UAP task force, UFO task force, that's going to be releasing some of its findings next year. I got together with some NASA scientists and the military veterans who were part of this incident, and we formed a nonprofit called UAPX that's doing the same thing as the Pentagon task force. And so we're out there bringing science to the unknown.
Wow, that's exciting. So definitely, Chris, you're cutting out a little bit there, but definitely check out Chris and his blog online as well. Cynthia, to you, quick closing thoughts, and where can everyone find you online?
Sure. So I guess my summary would be, I think, as we move into this new commercialization era, there's many different opportunities for entrepreneurs and, sort of the new space community to come in and to really take the place of what governments were doing. So I think there's tremendous opportunity, not just for large corporates, but for entrepreneurs in general. You can find me on LinkedIn at Cynthia Buteau, or also Space Commerce Matters is our website. And we would love to talk to entrepreneurs and those looking to get connected, connect their technologies to what the real market opportunities look like.
Wonderful. And thank you all so much for joining us today. One fun question, and it's literally a one-word answer, so do not digress on it. But if you could go to any planet, what is the one planet you would want to visit? Ifran.
Uranus.
All right, Gary.
The situation, Kyle, I would go to one of the Goldilocks planets, is like Earth, we could live.
Julian.
Probably one of Jupiter's satellites.
All right, Cynthia.
Mars. I want to meet Matt Damon. Little joke.
Best answer we've had thus far on this episode, on this question. Chris, to you, which planet?
Well, I'd say if these UAPs/UFOs are piloted by intelligent life, I'd like to go to wherever they're from.
All right, there we go. There you have it. Everyone, again, thank you so much for tuning in today. And also investors, thank you for sharing your thoughts and insights. To our audience, as everyone has mentioned, they're available on social media and online everywhere to continue the conversation. So do please reach out to contact and continue things as going forward. If you like what you heard today, make sure you click subscribe, give us a thumbs up, and we'd love to hear from you. Feel free to reach out if you'd like to be on an episode today, or if you'd like to pitch us as investors and our live audience. A big thank you again to all of our panelists and to Elena and to the entire LA Token team for making VCTV possible. Thank you, Cynthia. We'll be back here tomorrow with another double episode of VCTV, as we will have all this week as we get deeper and deeper in technology and different industries around the world as things are shaping up here in 2020. I'm Kyle Ellicott, your host. You can find me online everywhere at Kyle Ellicott. That's it for today. We'll see you back here tomorrow on